Today, we're going to be talking about your memories, and we're going to be talking about the problem with your memories and the stories that we end up telling, but also that people end up telling to us. There's a lot of scientific and psychological proof showing that maybe even up to half of our memories are not actually accurate. And when we look and we retell a story or we talk about something that happened to us in the past, people tend to do, when we remember something, we tend to do one of three things. We either generalize that memory, we delete information from that memory, or we distort information from that memory. And we're going to dive into each one of those today. Before we do, though, I want to make you understand that when someone is telling you a memory and they generalize, delete, or distort information, it's not malicious. It's not their fault. It's not like they're trying to tell you a false memory. Majority of people, and probably you before hearing this, are not even aware that we actually do this. And so we're going to dive into memory and how memory actually works inside of your brain and realize that some of the stuff that we actually think is true and actually happened to us in our past might not have happened in the way that we actually think that it did. And it's important to remember when you think of your memory, we like to think kind of like a video recorder. Like you take remember when you were a little kid and you had like the high 8 tapes and you would put it inside of the VCR and you would play the high 8 tape and you would watch back memories from your childhood and things that actually happened. Your memory works a lot different from a video recorder though. It's not perfect playback like a video would be. A video would be perfect playback of exactly what happened in reality. Memories though are reconstructed rather than replayed, which is important to understand. They are reconstructed and built piece by piece rather than perfect playback, which, if you think about it, introduces chances of a lot of inaccuracies in a memory. And each time that we recall an event, our brain reconstructs that memory. And that can be influenced by a lot of different things. It can be influenced by our current feelings, our biases, new information that has come into our brain since that memory happened, which ultimately alter the original memory. So if the memory is not perfect playback, that means that the memory actually changes over time based off of everything that's happened to you since that memory. So it's not perfect. And a lot of times, what's crazy about it is because we're reconstructing the memory every single time we recall it, a lot of times the memory becomes less true the more that we recall it over time. Because you're recalling the last time that you thought about the memory or the last time you spoke about the memory, you're not recalling the actual event. And it's really important to understand this about yourself, but also to understand about other people as well. Now, before we dive into the three things that people do with the generalizing, deleting, and the distorting, there's one very important thing to talk about. Everyone is viewing the world differently. I always say we're all viewing the same thing, but we're all seeing something different. And so it's like we're all wearing different colored glasses and perceiving the world through different lenses. And so all of the things that we've been through, all of the things that I've been through are going to make me see reality a little bit different than the way that you're going to see it. And all of the things that you've been through in your life are going to make you see reality a little bit different than the way I actually see it and everyone else around you sees it. So we're all seeing the same thing. We're all seeing the same world, but we're all seeing it differently. And so a lot of things that pop up, like one of the things that can really distort and change your memories are stereotypes. Our memories are significantly shaped by our existing mental structures of the world. The way that we were raised, what we were taught was good and bad, the way that our parents interacted with us, the way that our parents interacted with the world, and those existing mental structures are what help us organize information. And sometimes stereotypes can come in there as well. And sometimes with stereotypes, when we remember an event, what happens is we often actually fill in the gaps in our memory with what we believe likely happened, based on different schemas that we have, different stereotypes that we have, rather than what actually happened. And so if you think back to a memory, a lot of times you're remembering pieces of it, but then you're filling the gaps in based off of where you currently are mentally right now in your life. And that's really important to realize that stereotypes and all of our conditioning gets in the way, but also really strong emotions can impair your memory as well. A really traumatic event, when you have something that's very traumatic happen to you, and very emotionally charged events, you might remember them more vividly, but just because you remember them more vividly doesn't actually mean that you remember it more accurately. And emotionally charged memories can sometimes be a blend of fact and our emotional interpretation of those events. And so you've heard me say it on the podcast many times before, is that when your emotion is high, your logic is low. So when you actually have really, really high emotions, a lot of logic in your brain actually turns off. And so like if you're really terrified of something and you're really like terrified, and maybe you had a situation where you were really afraid of your safety, like your physical safety, you can remember that very vividly, but because it's so vivid and your emotions are so high in that moment, you're actually not processing the world 100% correctly. Because when your emotion is high, your logic is low. Parts of your brain actually sends less blood flow to the logical thinking part of your brain. And so like, I'll give you an example. Let's say me and you are walking down the street and we're just going for a walk, and we walk by a dog that is on the other side of the fence. And the dog doesn't do anything crazy. It just barks at us. And the dog barks. And that's it. It doesn't try to jump over. It just barks at us. If we're walking by that dog, and I love dogs and I don't have any, crazy memories of the past of dogs attacking me, I might not even recall the dog 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, that we even walked by a dog. But if you were attacked by a dog as a child, you might not just remember the dog, but you also might be in such a heightened state that the dog brought all of your attention and all of your focus to make sure that you were going to be safe. And you were trying to avoid all of that. You might have gotten to a really heightened state. But let's say at the exact same time, we're walking by the dog, there's also some palm trees that are across the street. And the dog barks, and you notice the dog and all of your attention goes to the dog. But I'm looking across the street and I see a bunch of palm trees. And I'm like, you know what? I've been thinking about getting palm trees installed in my house. And I'm starting to think about the palm trees and where would the palm trees go? Oh, we put palm trees here. We put them in this place. And here's what's crazy about it. We're both walking down the same street. I might not recall the dog in any sort of way. You might not see the palm trees in any sort of way. But I would recall the palm trees. You would recall the dog. And so you have to think about that. The thing about it is we're both seeing the exact same world, but we're both remembering two completely different things based off of our past, based off of what's going on in our life, based off of our emotional charge. And so what happens is we tend to generalize, we delete, or we distort. And so I became aware of this when I was younger and I first started in sales and I was training sales reps. When I was younger, I had trained over 2,000 sales reps in a company that I was at by the time I was 24. And we used to do these things called phone jams, where everyone would come into the office and we make cold calls to try to set up appointments. And it was the funniest thing because we would have some of my sales reps come in and an hour after being there, I'd be like, hey, how's everything going? And they're like, oh, everything's okay. And I'd say, okay, well, how many appointments have you set up? Oh, I've set up no appointments. Oh, really? Why not? Oh, well, no one's home. And I would say, no one's home? No, nobody's home. And I'd say, okay, how many phone calls have you made? Oh my gosh, I've made so many phone calls. And then I'd be like, okay, let me look at your phone real quick. And I take their phone, and in the past hour, they made like 3 phone calls. And none of those 3 people answered. But what they said is no one is home. And so I would say, okay, we're in Broward County. There's like 1.2 million people in Broward County. Is it true that no one is home? No, it's not true. It's true that the 3 people that they called are not home. But what they're doing is they are generalizing everything based off of a couple circumstances that showed them that 3 people weren't home. And so like another example of this, of how we could generalize, is when we're recalling time at school. Let's say that you had a stressful time when you were in high school. Maybe you were bullied, maybe you were an outcast, maybe you were made fun of, whatever it might be. And I would say, hey, what was high school like for you? Oh my God, high school was so hard. It was so stressful. I was so stressed out every day, right? Like I was so stressed out every day. So it was so stressful. And even if that's not the case every single day, we generalize all of it. Oh my God, it was so hard. And, we might forget about the fun that we had in school, the time that we had success in school, the boredom that we had in school, maybe the excitement to see our friends. And what happens is we generalize the entire memory based off of just one feeling, which was stressful. And the reason why our brains do this is because our brains tend to summarize long periods or complex experiences into more digestible narratives. And this simplification is great, but it can make it easier to retrieve information. But what happens is when we communicate it later on down the road, we generalize the entire thing. Another reason why is because we generalize is because there's the sheer amount of volume of information that's coming into your brain at any point in time. Remembering every single detail of every single event is not going to happen. And it's what they call cognitively overwhelming, where your brain just can't take in all the information. And so to be more efficient, what it does is it just recognizes patterns so that therefore they say, oh yeah, well, it was just really stressful. Could you have had a few stressful days, quite a few stressful days? Yeah. Were all of them stressful? No. So we generalize that. Like one of the ways that we do this, like if you're not familiar, I train a lot of coaches. I've trained over 1,400 coaches, and I have a program called Business Breakthrough where I actually teach this. And one of the funny things about it is that when someone joins Business Breakthrough and we start teaching them how to grow on Instagram and how to grow their business, one of the things they say when they step into being a coach is, oh my God, everyone on Instagram is a coach. And I'm like, there's over 1 billion people on Instagram. Is it true that everyone is a coach? Well, no, it's not true that everyone's a coach. But what's true is that now your reticular activating system, because you are a coach, is noticing more coaches. The same way that if you buy a truck and you never saw that truck anywhere, well, now you're going to start to notice that truck. Yeah, it's in your reticular activating system, but it's not that everyone drives that truck or that everyone is a coach. And so we just tend to generalize information because the amount of sheer volume, it just becomes easier to throw information into a box and say, all of the things are this way, or all of my high school days were like this. So that's generalization, which is very, very common with people. We do it all of the time. I do it all the time. And I notice other people doing it all the time. So start noticing in yourself when you're generalizing information, but also notice in other people when they're generalizing information as well. The second thing we do is we delete information. So we basically remove pieces of the story or reality to fit our own narrative. So let's say you had a tough relationship with your mom, right? And I were to say, hey, tell me about your relationship with your mom. Oh my gosh, she was so tough. She was so stressful. She was just really hard on me. And you can retrieve so many instances where your mother was difficult, but a lot of times it becomes hard for you to pull up the memories that are great. So I'm sure there were some times where she was loving or she was helpful, but we delete that information to fit the narrative that we have in our mind to prove our point based off of the story that we're telling. And a lot of times we don't even recognize that we're doing it, but we delete information also because not everything is noteworthy to remember. So it might not fit your narrative, but also we delete information because do you remember what you wore 3 days ago? Like, I don't know what I wore 3 days ago. And it does this, your brain does this to conserve cognitive resources. There's actually a thing that's called neural pruning that your brain does. It's a process where unused neural connections are eliminated to enhance the efficiency of your nerve transmission in your brain. And so if certain memories or information are not frequently used or recall, the brain might actually prune these connections, leading to you forgetting something that actually happened or fully deleting it from your memory, which is where the deletion comes from. And then the other side of it, and the last one is we distort information. So let's say maybe you remember from your birthday party where there was a clown at your birthday party, and it just scared the hell out of you. And you just remember this time when your parents hired a clown and it was the worst birthday you ever had because you were so terrified of it and you were crying in the corner. And it was like, let's say it's your 6th birthday party and you're 35 years old and you're talking to your parents. You're like, hey, remember that time you guys hired the clown and it ended up being like this terrible birthday party? And your parents are like, what are you talking about? We never hired a clown. And you're like, no, there was that birthday. It was my 6th birthday party where you hired a clown and it was terrifying. And I remember wanting to leave and not be around the clown. And they're like, no. That wasn't your birthday party. That was Johnny's birthday party, your friend. And what happens is you distort information and you take a birthday that you went to of your friend where it was a terrible clown that scared you and you're crying in the corner. And then you take that and you actually think it was your own birthday. But your whole life up until that moment, 29 years, you thought it was your birthday. So you deleted the memory and consolidated them, and you didn't even realize that it was completely false. It also shows up when you accidentally alter the sequence of events. There's been many psychological studies that based off of the questions that somebody is asked can actually alter their memory of it. And they can remember things out of order. There was one study that was done about a car crash where they showed a car crash to people. And then it would say, hey, how did the car crash happen? and they would talk about the car crash. And based off of their questions, it would actually change a person's memory. Like how fast the car was going would change, when they recalled and were trying to tell the story. Based off of the questions they asked the person who watched the car crash on video, how fast the car was going was changed based off the questions. They also asked questions about like the car crash and the glass all over the place. And people were like, yes, there was glass everywhere. And then they rewatched the video later, there was no glass. And so we change our memories. We distort them based off of the way we perceive the world, but also at the same time, the things that are going on in our heads in the moment. And so it's really important to remember this. I'm not telling you this to just try to scare the hell out of you, but your memories are your past. And a lot of times they're not as true as you think they are. And we're just trying to fit them into a narrative, or different aspects of them have been pruned and we forget about it. So if up to 50% of what you remember could be false, then the real question is, today, we're going to be talking about your memories, and we're going to be talking about the problem with your memories and the stories that we end up telling, but also that people end up telling to us. There's a lot of scientific and psychological proof showing that maybe even up to half of our memories are not actually accurate. And when we look and we retell a story, or we talk about something that happened to us in the past, people tend to do, when we remember something, we tend to do one of three things. We either generalize that memory, we delete information from that memory, or we distort information from that memory. And we're going to dive into each one of those today. Before we do, though, I want to make you understand that when someone is telling you a memory and they generalize, delete, or distort information, it's not malicious. It's not their fault. It's not like they're trying to tell you a false memory. Majority of people, and probably you before hearing this, are not even aware that we actually do this. And so we're going to dive into memory and how memory actually works inside of your brain, and realize that some of the stuff that we actually think is true and actually happened to us in our past might not have happened in the way that we actually think that it did. And it's important to remember, when you think of your memory, we like to think kind of like a video recorder. Like you take remember when you were a little kid and you had like the high 8 tapes, and you would put it inside of the VCR and you would play the high 8 tape, and you would watch back memories from your children, your childhood, and things that actually happened. Your memory works a lot different from a video recorder, though. It's not perfect playback like a video would be. A video would be perfect playback of exactly what happened in reality. Memories, though, are reconstructed rather than replayed, which is important to understand. They are reconstructed and built piece by piece rather than perfect playback, which, if you think about it, introduces chances of a lot of inaccuracies in a memory. And each time that we recall an event, our brain reconstructs that memory. And that can be influenced by a lot of different things. It can be influenced by our current feelings, our biases, new information that has come into our... Welcome to today's episode of the Mindset Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Dial. If you have not yet done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. And if you're out there and you love this podcast, please give us a rating and review on whatever platform you listen to us on. The more positive rating reviews that we get, the more that we actually are able to be seen by people who have never listened to us before. So if you want to help us grow and help us get this message out, please give us a rating and review however you listen to us. Today, we're going to be talking about how to step into your power. We're going to talk about decision making, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things as far as fear and power go. And when I say your personal power, I don't mean power when you think about like a negative connotation. I mean that deep down inside of you, you are really fucking powerful. But are you bringing that out to the world, or are you hiding? Are you hiding behind the world, behind society, behind what you're supposed to do, behind what your parents told you to do, behind not wanting to be seen? You have a whole lot of power inside of you. And what we want to talk about here today is how to step into that power and how to start making decisions that allow you to find that power and be more powerful. Because the most important decision that you can make, majority of them are little teeny tiny small decisions throughout the day, can come from one of two places. It can either come from fear, or it can come from power. And when I say power, I mean personal power, like stepping into the best version of yourself. And if we look at it, we know it's very obvious. I've been there many times, and I still find myself doing this sometimes today, is most of our decisions come from a place of fear. Most of our decisions, our thought process of whether we're going to do something or not do something, the first thing that usually comes up is all of the things that could happen that we don't want to happen, all of the things that could possibly go wrong. And so we literally go straight to fear and we start thinking about all the things that we don't want, and we become paralyzed and we don't do shit. We don't do anything. We do absolutely nothing. And this is I was watching a video one time, and there was a guy that was on stage, and he had somebody come up and he was talking about, okay, we've got 2 chairs. There's one chair here on the left. There's one chair here on the right. I want you to sit down in this chair, and I want you to tell me and tell everybody else in the crowd what you don't want. And this person's like, okay, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this. A laundry list of all of these things they don't want. And he said, cool. All right, now go ahead and switch chairs. Go to the other chair. And in this chair, you're going to tell me what you do want. So tell me everything that you do want. It was funny because the person's like, well, I want to be happy. I want this. I want this. I want this. And I don't want this, and I don't want this. And you notice that they go from what they don't want is very easy for them to rattle off a whole bunch of things. When they go to what they do want, they've got a couple things. And then slowly but surely, it almost always transitions to the person talking about what they don't want. We almost always, in our brain, will go straight to fear and focus on what we don't want. So you could say, like, I want to grow a business. And you can start thinking about how amazing it could be. But then you start thinking about, well, what if I fail? What if I don't make money? What if I lose money? What if I go in debt? What if I lose my house? What if my children and I are homeless on the side of the road and we can't eat? Right? And it's like you literally go from like wanting to start a business to just kicking your dreams in the face. The problem is that most of us come from fear often. And if you look back at your entire life, really think about this for a second. When you look back at your entire life, if you're 45 years old right now, are most of the decisions that you've made in your life coming from personal power or fear? Did you take the safe route? Did you go get a degree because that's what you thought was safe? Did you go for a certain degree that you didn't want to because you thought that job was safe? Did you apply for that to work for the government or to work for this company because you thought that it was safe long term? For me, I know that a lot of my life, the first 26 years of my life, a lot of my decisions were made from fear until I realized that the decisions that were made from fear won't give me the life that I want. Like the life that you truly want deep down inside and all of the potential that you have that you could bring out to the world, you can't make decisions in fear to bring that out to the world. Decisions made from fear were keeping me in my comfort zone. Oh, I want to be safe. I just bought a new house. I want to make sure I can pay my bills. I want to make sure I can be fed. I want to make sure I can save some money. I want to make sure I can still travel. I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I can start my own business. I don't know if I could. You know what? I'll just go ahead and I'll go the safe route. I can make good money. I can be pretty good. And maybe I'll get like 15 days of vacation per year. That'd be awesome. Yeah, let me go that route. But why do we go to fear? Why does our brain almost always go to fear automatically? Because the brain is literally designed to keep you alive. Your brain does not give a damn about how successful you are, how much money you have, how much sex you have, how much money you have in your bank account, what your investments are, where you're traveling to this year. It doesn't care about any of those things. There's a part of your brain called the amygdala, and that is the part of your brain that literally creates fears even when there's nothing to fear in front of you. And so we have to know that our brain will automatically, almost always, default to negative. Then we start thinking about, oh my gosh, what are these people going to think of me? What if I fail? What if I get rejected? All of this. And that's why it's so important to develop self-awareness, like very, very clear self-awareness. I always say when people ask me, I've been on podcasts before and they ask me like, if you could give the world one superpower, one gift, what would you want? I'm like, extreme self-awareness. If everybody had extreme self-awareness, they would be better. They would treat people better. The world would be 1,000,000 times better because they'd be aware of how their actions change the people around them as well. There'd be no war if people were self-aware of what their decisions did. And if you think about that, when you think about all of our decisions that are made from fear, how many great decisions have you heard of that somebody has achieved this great, massive, amazing, beautiful thing that changed the world or changed something that was just life-changing that came from a place of fear? When you think about like Steve Jobs and they were sitting down and creating the iPhone. I think the iPhone came out in like 2006, 2007, 2008, something like that. I don't remember what it was, but I remember when it came out. Do you think Steve Jobs and everybody in Apple was sitting around and they're like, okay, well, what if this doesn't work? No, it was like, we have to like forge through on a path that nobody knows. It's never been seen. You got to come from a place of personal power. We can do this. We're the company to do this. I'm the person to do this. How many do you think came from a place of fear? Probably none. I would say no great decisions that have changed people's lives, but also the world, came from a place of fear. And I don't mean fear like the fear of death or the fear of like, hey, I don't want to drive fast because I don't want to get into an accident. I mean like where you have an opportunity to change your life, to make your, like it's literally like a fork in the road, and left you can go and it could be the same that it's always been, and right is something vastly different. But instead of going for vastly different, instead of going out into the uncertainty, doing something you've never done before, risking it all, you decided to play small. You decided to take the safe route. You decided to stay in your comfort zone because the comfort zone is comfortable. And if you've been listening to my podcast long enough, I always say that the comfort zone is a place where your dreams go to die. Your dreams will die in your comfort zone. And you just give up on a big goal. It's easier not to do it. It's easier just to hang out. It's easier just to chill. You know, so many people listening right now, at one point in time, wanted to start a business, but they didn't. Where do you think that, it's like 6 years ago, you wanted to start that business. You had that great idea. You were super passionate about it. But then you thought to yourself, like, I don't know if it's possible. What if I can't pay the bills? What if it takes too much time? What if I lose my sleep and then it goes into my actual day job? And you had this idea to start a business 6 years ago. But instead of stepping into your personal power, you stepped into a place of fear. Where could that business be right now, 6 years, almost 2,000 days later? Where could that business be? How could it have changed your life? How vastly different could your life be if you decided to step off the ledge and just know that the parachute was going to open when you jumped off? Where could your life be now? It could be vastly different, couldn't it? What about in like investing into your personal development where you're like, you know what, I'm going to invest in my personal development, but oh man, like, I don't know. I want to go to this event, but what if people look at me funny? What if I get called on stage? I don't know. You know what I'll do? I'll just save money instead. I won't step into my personal power. I won't go into personal development. There's so many decisions that you could be in a relationship with somebody, but you decided instead, oh, I'm afraid of being rejected. I'm not going to do it. And you could have a completely different life if you had just came from a place of personal power versus a place of fear. How many decisions have you made from a place of just trying to play it safe? There's less risk. There's less risk going this route. Like we always think that there's less risk just going this route. And we justify that there's less risk going this route. And so we decide to go down that route. But in life, if you don't risk anything, you're risking everything. In your life, if you don't risk anything, you are risking everything in your life. You're risking everything that you could be. How many world-changing moments came from a place of fear that changed the course of history? How many people do you look up to that have all of the life that you want, you look up to, you think that they're amazing, all of this? How many do you think got there because they decided to come from a place of fear? Probably none, like zero. How many great inventions came from a place of fear? How many great companies came from a place of fear? When you look at that, you start to realize that we make the majority of our decisions, most of us usually do, through the majority of our lives, coming from a place of fear, taking a safe route. So what we should be focused on is making more decisions from a place of power, personal power, stepping into who you could be. And frankly, honestly, who you should be, like who you were put on this planet to be. Are you just going to be like everybody else? You don't look like anybody else. You don't have the same fingerprint as everybody else. You were designed uniquely because you were supposed to be unique, not because you were supposed to go the same route as everybody else and just follow the rat race and do the same thing and not take risks and dive with, a little bit extra money in the bank account, maybe a couple cool experiences and just living a pretty cool life. Is there risk for you to step into personal power, for you to step into the unknown? Is there risk? Absolutely. There's risk, and you can focus on the risk, and that risk can paralyze you and stop you from going and doing something. Or you could focus on what you could be, what you could do. Instead of focusing on your problems, you can also focus on possibility. Knowing that your brain will default to problems, you could also just decide, oh, there's my brain. It's going to problems. It's going to fear. Instead of being on problems, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to focus on possibility. I'm going to focus on what could happen if I decide to go that route. Because if you don't risk anything, you're risking everything. It's kind of like the feeling I always tell people, it's like the gut feeling versus the brain. People always ask, like, how do I develop my intuition? How do I get my gut feeling? Number one, everybody's got it. It's always there, but we just tend to not listen to it. And when you don't listen to it for a really long time, you stop paying attention to it. There's the gut and there's the brain. The brain, once again, is designed to keep you alive. It's designed to keep you safe. And so you have this gut feeling of, you know what, I should start this business. I should ask that person out. I should decide to go to Africa and go on a safari instead of going for my next semester at school. I don't know what it is for you, but there's a gut feeling where you feel pulled towards something. Like you have, and the way to tell a gut feeling is usually think about the energy behind that feeling. Like if you have a feeling like you're feeling pulled towards something and thinking about doing this thing is giving you energy, like you have so much energy thinking about it, that's usually something that you're supposed to follow. And I always say your gut feeling, it's like your emotional compass. It knows what you're supposed to do. It knows you're supposed to go. You have to get good at listening, becoming quiet, shutting up, quieting the brain, and feeling into something, being like, what does my energy feel around this thing? Do I feel excited to go do this thing? Because you have that gut feeling, but then you've also got your brain. So you'll have a gut feeling arise and it'll pop up and you'll be excited and be like, this is amazing. I should definitely do this. But then what does the brain do? Oh yeah, but no, you can't do that. So your gut feeling is almost immediate. It's almost always there. It's like right away you feel drawn, you feel pulled towards something, and then your brain tries to talk you out of everything that's out of your comfort zone because it wants to keep you safe. It doesn't know that there's no potential danger on the other side of that comfort zone. Everything that you want is going to first require you to make a decision from a place of power instead of a place of fear. So what do you need to do? You need to start becoming really self-aware. You need to start paying attention to your feelings, to where you're getting energy from. If you pay attention to your energy, you'll almost always be guided in the right direction. Like when I think about what I do, I get so much, like people are like, you work so much. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm working. Like this shit is fun for me. It's exciting. I get so much energy by sitting down and figuring people out and working with people and learning about people and learning about neurology and psychology and early childhood development. Like this shit lights me up. For some people listening, most people listening, it probably doesn't to do what I do. And that's fine. But like all I did was follow the energy. And when I followed the energy, was there a lot of fear? Fuck yeah, there was a lot of fear. There was a ton of fear. To leave my job to start a podcast back in 2015 when people didn't even know what podcasts were, that makes no sense. Like everybody knows what podcasts are, right? Everyone and their mom has started a podcast. And they're like, oh, I'm going to make a podcast about blah, blah, blah. Everyone has started a podcast. Back in 2015, when I used to tell people I was a podcaster, the response I got more back than anything else was, what is a podcast? So does it make any sense for me to go, I'm going to quit my job where I'm making $200,000 a year, over $200,000 a year. I'm going to quit that job and I'm going to do this podcasting thing that no one's ever heard of before. It made no logical sense. But for some reason, something deep down inside of me is like, you have to do this. Like this is something that you're supposed to do. And so what did I do? I just followed the energy. And I had to be aware of the energy. And then when the fear popped in, I need to say, no, this feels right. I'm going to follow this thing that feels right. When you feel that feeling, you have to follow it. Otherwise, you're going to look back in your life and you're going to have massive regret. You're going to wish that you made less decisions from fear. So noticing fear is good. Listening to the fear is bad. Like fear can keep you alive. So what do you do is, number one, you have to become very self-aware of when you notice fear popping up. Take a step back. When you're in the jar, you can't read the label. So when you take a step back, you're like, okay, hold on. What am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this? Is this actually something to fear? Am I focusing on problems or am I focusing on possibility? Oh, I'm focusing on problems. Okay, what is the possibility? What is the potential outcome that could come if I do follow this? It could be amazing. How could this change my life? So the first thing is we have to take a step back. We have to become very self-aware. The second thing is that's really good about this is this is showing you the edge of your comfort zone. You know, if you decide to take a leap and go outside of your comfort zone, you fast forward. Like right now, you fast forward 5 years from today and you step into your personal power and you make decisions not from fear, but out of your personal power, your life's going to be vastly different. If you continue to make your decisions out of fear though, and you fast forward in 5 years, you're not going to like where you are. You just will not like where you are if you continue to make decisions out of fear. But if you fast forward and you make decisions out of power, watch out because you're going to create some magic. You're going to change your life. You're going to change other people's life. You're going to change the little pocket of the world that you live in. And that's what you're here to do. Not to play small, but to do something amazing. And so you've got to realize there's two things that you could do at any point in time. Make decisions out of fear or make decisions out of personal power. Make decisions out of personal power and your life will change. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on your Instagram stories and tag me at Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. And if you love this podcast, you want to follow us on Instagram, you want some extra Mindset Mentor on your Instagram, go ahead and follow us on there as well. It's the Mindset Mentor Podcast. Once again, the Mindset Mentor Podcast on Instagram. And I'm going to leave it the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make someone else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Welcome to today's episode of the Mindset Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Dial. If you have not yet done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast episode. And if you're out there and you love this podcast, you would absolutely 100% love my book. It is 256 pages, 3 years of writing, 17 years of my life in coaching people. And it is called Level Up, How to Get Focus, Stop Procrastinating, and Upgrade Your Life. If you're interested in getting it, it is available in many countries worldwide. Go to robdial.com/book. and order it now. Today, we're going to be talking about how to set boundaries in your life. We're going to talk about how to set boundaries in any relationship that you have. And this is not just romantic relationships. This is all relationships. This is romantic relationships. This is parental relationships. This is relationships with your coworkers. This is relationship with your boss. This is relationship with your siblings, with your family, with your children, with your friendships, with everybody. And the reason why this is important is because one thing that I have found over working with people for 17 years is that most people were never taught boundaries. We're never taught what they are, and we're never taught exactly how to use them, how to set them up. And if you don't set boundaries for yourself and for other people to associate with you, it can really cause extreme turmoil with someone that you love. And a lot of times that turmoil, even it could be really big turmoil, or it could even be like just a low grade resistance towards someone. You're like, man, I really love my aunt, but like, I don't know why I have so much resistance towards her. Well, it might be that she's overstepping boundaries, but it's not necessarily all her fault, because maybe you haven't communicated your boundaries because you don't know what your boundaries are. And so you look at it and it's like, what are boundaries? Boundaries are our limits. They are your limits, how we want to experience ourselves in a relationship with another human. And these are really important because before we go into any relationship that exists in the world, the most important relationship that you have is with yourself. I get a lot of messages on Instagram and I read all of them. I don't have time to respond to every single one of them. I try to respond to as many as I can, but I just don't have time. And one thing that's very, very clear to me is that a lot of people are in relationships with someone else. And because they love that other person, they let that person step all over their lives. A lot of people, I get messages of like, my mother, she oversteps and she does this and she does this. Or, I told her that I'm trying to be a more positive person, but every 17 minutes is like she sends me another article from the news about how the world is imploding and she's so fearful and she doesn't realize it, but she's putting all of her fear into me, and I'm just really resistant towards my mom. And so I get messages like this in many different ways, where my husband, he doesn't respect my boundaries. And I'm like, well, have you communicated your boundaries? Well, no, not necessarily. And so really what it comes down to is the most important relationship that we have more than anything else is a relationship that we have with ourselves. And we give ourselves up for a relationship if we're not setting boundaries. We're giving up a piece of ourselves for that relationship to be okay if we're not setting boundaries. And so when you decide that you want to set a boundary, it's really about, what do I want? What do I believe? How do I want to be communicated with? And how can I go and be so firm in my relationship with myself that I communicate this with the people that I love, with my parents, with my siblings, with my friends, with my partners, with people that I work with my children. This is a really big one because many people completely lose themselves as an actual solo human into being a parent. And it's why a lot of parents feel like they've lost themselves when their children finally leave. And so it might be you communicating this with your children, but it also might be you communicating with your spouse and saying, hey, we need to have boundaries with our children as to, we need to be a couple. We need to be our own sovereign beings and also take care of them. So maybe you have boundaries that you set for yourself that's communicated with your children, that's communicated with your spouse. Maybe you and your spouse have boundaries of, hey, on Friday at 6 p.m. every single week, we already have a babysitter hired and we're going to have date night. And that's just a boundary that we set for ourselves in our relationship with each other. And so what happens if you don't figure out what these boundaries are, which we'll talk about all this as we go through today, don't worry. If we don't figure out what these boundaries are, a lot of times people overstep these boundaries because they don't understand they're there. And then you feel like you have to give a piece of yourself up, and you resist certain people and you resist relationships. And instead of hanging out with someone that you love, you'd actually prefer not to be around them. And so really what it comes down to with the relationship with yourself is you should never put someone above you, because the better that you are, the better that they become. I mean, so many people are like, well, no, I put my husband above me. I put my children above me. And it's like, no, you shouldn't. You should put yourself first. That's not narcissistic. That's not selfish. You put yourself first because you realize that when you put yourself first, you work on yourself. You become the best you can be. You then become a better mother, a better father, a better son, a better daughter. All of those things. Too many people lose themselves in relationships. What today is about is rediscovering who you are. Because some of you listening have probably lost yourself to a relationship. And it's not terrible. It happens. You have to lose yourself sometimes in order to find yourself. But sometimes you find yourself through the losing. And you go, you know what? I've been stepped on a little bit too much. I don't want it to be that way anymore. I know who I am now. I'm going to actually go out and actually communicate with the world. And you have to be, there's no real other way to say it. You have to be full of yourself. You have to love yourself so much that you'll do this. And I love the phrase being full of yourself, because I'm not saying narcissistic. I'm not saying that you need to not care about anybody else. You need to be selfish. What I'm saying is you need to take care of yourself first. You cannot pour from an empty cup. I remember a mentor of mine one time, I was at an event he was speaking at, and it was a small event. There's only like 50, 75 people that were there. And he's like, you have to be full of yourself. And a lady stood up and she's like, I've got a question for you. Like, you say that you have to be full of yourself, but that sounds like narcissistic. It sounds selfish. And he goes, really? And she goes, yeah. And he looks her dead in the eye and he goes, who the fuck should I be full of? And if you really think about that, it's true. It's like, should you be full of everybody else and not full of yourself? When you be full of yourself, it means like, hey, it's prioritizing yourself. It's like, hey, it is okay to cancel some plans because you decided that you want to work on yourself, or because you're anxious today, or because you want to read, or you're going to skip a party with your friends that you were going to go to because you want to work on yourself and go to the gym. Or you decided, you know what, I'm going to stay at home and cook, and I'm going to have a self-care day. It's time for us to like start to encourage and respect self-love and self-improvement in ourselves and also other people. And don't do it all of the time. Don't just cancel plans 5 minutes before. But if you feel like something, be respectful of other people, obviously. But if you feel like, man, like, I just don't feel good today, and I know I've got dinner day with my friend, text your friend, hey, I'm not feeling really good. I'm just going to stay home. I hope that's okay. I'm sorry for canceling so late. I love you, right? And actually starting to see that you need to set boundaries for yourself, for your life. And I've been through a journey in my life of, when I was younger, my first company, I had no boundaries, none. I would work 110 hours a week. It was from 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. every single day, Monday through Sunday, for 3 years until I ran it into the ground. And I realized that not only do I need to set boundaries for myself in relationships to people, sometimes I need to set boundaries for myself for my job, my business that I own, people that I work with, and deciding, you know what, I do need to take some days off. I do need to schedule from some free time. I do need to schedule my work time. When I'm working, when I'm not working, I do need to have vacations. I do need to travel. That's just one thing that I love. And be careful. This is a really fine line as I'm speaking about. I do understand this. I'm not saying don't run from what you're supposed to do and call it a self-care day. Like if you're like, oh, you know what, I'm supposed to go ahead and make this presentation today for work, but I really need a self-care day. So yeah, I'm not going to do it. And so don't run from your responsibilities. But what I'm talking about is prioritizing yourself. And so let's dive into it. How do we set boundaries? What does this whole thing look like? Well, the first thing that you want to do is you want to decide what you want. Like, what do you want for your life? If you were to build the perfect relationship with this person, with your spouse, with your sister, with your mother, with your father, if you were to build the perfect relationship with this person, what would it look like? How do you want to feel in the relationship? How do you want to show up in the relationship? How do you want them to feel in this relationship with you? How do you want them to show up in the relationship? And the important part is to be really, really clear. Don't just say like, oh, I want to feel good in the relationship with my mom. That's stupid. You want to get better than that. Like, be clear of exactly what it is that you want. And then you start to come up with a plan of like, okay, I kind of think I know what I want in my relationship with my husband. Okay, now that I know what I have in my relationship with my husband, how would I communicate this to him effectively? And then you decide to bring it up and plan out how you're going to communicate to him in the way that you feel is respectful and why it is also important to you. And you have to realize that you teach people how to talk to you. You teach people how to treat you. And so the first step is to decide exactly what it is that you want and get very, very clear on it. The second step is you need to communicate it. I know this is the awkward part. This is where everyone's stomach started to turn as I'm talking, right? It might be hard for you to communicate your boundaries with someone when you've never actually clearly communicated any boundaries with this person. It might be hard, but it's necessary. Take all of the blame if you have to, right? Like take all of the blame. So let's say, for instance, you work from home, right? Your mom calls you and she's like, hey, honey, I don't have time. I know you work from home. Can you go pick this up? Instead of saying, I'm working, I can't go pick your stuff up, right? Instead of doing something like that, say, listen, honey, mom, I love you, but I have a job. And just because I don't go to work doesn't necessarily mean that I can do whatever it is. I don't go to a physical office. Doesn't mean that I can necessarily just run errands for you. So I'm open to helping you out. But listen, I don't get off until 6 o'clock. I can't do anything until then. So I would recommend, seeing if somebody else can do it for you, hiring somebody to do it for you, asking one of my siblings if they could do it for you as well, right? Maybe your mom calls you and she's just, like I said, I hear this example all the time of like, my mom, she's so fearful. She sends me messages and this, talks about how this person was murdered in a city 5 hours away from me and saying, oh my gosh, be careful in your city. What you just say to her is, listen, I love you, but I'm trying to start looking at the bright side of things in life. I love you, but I don't want to hear you complain all the time. I don't want to hear about this stuff. I don't want to hear about these things. I don't want you to call me and tell me about all of the negativity that you saw on the news. And so you start to actually communicate this with them. Now, I know most of you are out there and you're afraid to have these conversations and you're afraid of making the other person mad. And so one of the things that was taught to me by a mentor of mine a few years ago is the act of disarming somebody before you tell them something that's difficult. And so disarming means that I'll just explain how it works, right? So you're going to say, hey, listen, can I talk to you about something? And they're like, yeah, of course. Okay. Before I do, listen, I'm going to be honest. I'm really afraid to tell you this. And I'm just curious, do I have permission just to speak from my heart and not be judged? And they're like, yeah, of course you can. And so that is the act of disarming, is to tell, if you're nervous, tell them you're nervous. Tell them you're afraid of how you're going to react. Is it okay and then what you do is you ask the permission from them. Is it okay if do I have permission to just speak from my heart and speak honestly and just not be judged? Yes, of course you can. And then you can lay down the hammer and tell people what you want. Listen, mom, can I talk to you about something? Yeah, of course, honey. Okay, before I do, I'm going to be honest. I actually kind of feel really nervous and afraid to tell you this. But is it okay? Like, do I have permission just to be honest with you, to speak from my heart and just not be judged? Oh, yes, of course, honey. Okay, well, I'm trying to work on myself, and I found that there's a lot of negativity in the world, and I'm trying to not pay attention to all the negativity. I'm trying to pay attention to the positive things in life. I notice when you send me these text messages about someone being murdered 5 hours from me, it makes me start to be really fearful. It triggers me, and I start to feel very unsafe. Would you please stop sending me these things because I don't want to see this negativity? Do you see how that's a lot better than, Mom, stop sending me this shit? And so you start to, you disarm and then you clearly communicate. You disarm and you clearly communicate. So that's step number 2. And then step number 3, which is one of the most, I would say that all of the, I was going to say this might be the most important part, but I guess all of them are the most important part. Number 3 is you have to stay firm. Build awareness. Notice when you fall back into old habits, because you will fall back into old habits over and over and over again. What you want to do is you want to build awareness of when somebody is overstepping their boundaries. And then you don't yell at them. You don't scream at them. You say, hey, mom, maybe she calls you and she's like, oh my God, did you hear about what happened on the news? And you're like, Mom, I didn't. Do you remember the conversation that we had 2 weeks ago about me trying to be more positive and not pay attention to it? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you helping me in trying to be more positive. And what you do is you stay firm. If they start to overstep your boundaries, which they will, because if you're 40 years old and you're now having this conversation with your mom, you have 40 years of patterns built up with your mom, of 40 years of her being used to sending this stuff to you, of her acting this way. been married for 7 years. Your husband, your wife has 7 years of working with you, and even before you got married, so it's like before you got engaged, you have years, all of this stuff, patterns built up. And it's about being very kind, but firm. Not being triggered, not yelling, not getting angry, but being kind, but firm. Hey, do you remember that conversation that we had about the way I want to be communicated with? Remember that conversation we had about, talking to me that way? Do you remember that conversation about, I said that there's times that you say things that make me feel inferior, and you start to bring them up in a very kind and loving way. And so the first thing is to be very, very clear on what it is that you want. The second thing is to communicate it clearly, disarm the person. And third thing is to stay firm. It's not really a difficult thing to do. It's not hard. Let's put it that way. It's not hard to do this stuff, but it is challenging because there is some patterns, some years of things that need to be changed over time. But if you're going to build the life that you want, you're going to have to start getting really clear about what is it you want, how you want other people to interact with you, how you want to feel around them, how you want to interact with them, and how you want them to feel in a relationship with you as well. And if you do this and you stay firm, I promise you, all of your relationships are going to get 10 times better than they currently are. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on Instagram stories and tag me in it, Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. Or if you got a friend who needs to get better with boundaries, take this, send it to them, say, hey, was thinking of you when I heard this, thought that you would love it, and see if this episode can help somebody else who you love in their life as well. And with that, I'm going to leave the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make someone else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to give you my number one tip to have more peace and happiness in your life. Let's dive in. I really want you to think about this for a second. What do you want? What do you want? Sure, you can want love, and you can want money, and you can want success and achievements and goals accomplished and all of those things. But truly, what do you want behind it all? I think the main thing that we all want is we all just want to be happy. We all just want more peace. But if you really think about it, what is happiness? The best real definitions I've kind of find is from a man that I follow named Naval Ravikant. And he says, peace is happiness at rest, and happiness is peace in motion. And when we're calm, we're happy. And when we're happy, we're at peace. And so I'm going to use the two words happiness and peace interchangeably in today's episode. But don't we all just want to be happy? You could want cool stuff and all of those things, but really you think that, once I get this thing, then I'll be happy. But really what you want is you just want to be happy. You just want to be at peace. But what does being happy actually mean? I think everyone knows what it feels like, but we might have trouble grasping what it is or putting it into words. It's kind of like grabbing water. It's almost impossible. But how do you actually define what happiness is? Well, I know what happiness is not, and I know what the barrier to happiness is. I've read a lot of psychology books in my life. I've read a lot of self-help books in my life. I've read a lot of spiritual books in my life. And one thing that I've found that is a common thing that is said or brought up in some sort of way is that our main barrier to happiness in our lives is desire. Desire is the feeling that something is missing or that something should be different. You need something else to make you happy. I need this thing to make me happy. I need this thing to make me calm. I need this thing to be peaceful. I need this person to stop doing that thing to make me calm. I need this person to stop doing that to be peaceful, whatever it might be. And until you get that thing, or until you get life to be the way that you want it to be, you have this internal feeling that you will not be right. And so another quote that Naval says is, desire is a contract that you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. Let me say that again. Desire is a contract that you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. When you want something, you're basically making a deal with yourself to be unhappy until you get it, is what it means. And each want, each desire is a choice to be unhappy. I think the biggest mistake that we make is thinking that we'll be happy if we get certain things. We'll be happy when I buy that car. We'll be happy when I make that amount of money. We'll be happy when I get that relationship. We're hooked on wanting things. We live in a society of more. We live in a society of wanting more things. We're hooked on the idea that something outside of us will make us happy. But that's a lie. Not having that thing is not the problem. Not being happy is not the problem. Your desire for things to be different than they are is the problem. And I am working at this as much as anybody. I've just got a little bit more awareness now, but I'm working at this really hard. This is like one of the things I've been working on the past 2 years the hardest, is to stop wanting, to stop desiring, to stop thinking that happiness is something that needs to happen outside of me for me to feel it after. And the crazy part is that we're creating the desire. You know, you think, I won't be happy until I get this thing, or until I won't be happy until they act differently. I desire to have something, or I desire for something to be different than it is. So the craziest part is that the only problem in your life is that you're creating problems. So we create the problem, and that's the problem. And it took me like 35 years to learn this and like to really get it deep down in my bones. You feel happy when you don't feel like something is missing in your life. You feel happy, you feel at peace when you don't feel like something is missing in your life. We often think, oh, I need this, I need that, or I need something to change. It could be wanting a new car, or a house, or a vacation, or a relationship, or it could be wanting someone in your life to be different, or wanting them to act different. Well, I would be happier if they stopped doing this to me. They're not the problem. Not having that thing is not the problem. You and your thoughts are the problem. Your thoughts of wanting something, of desiring something. We're stuck wanting. And when we feel like we have everything that we need, when we are grateful for everything that we have, we stop worrying about the past. We stop worrying about the future. And that's when we feel at peace. That's when we feel happy, is when we are here and we are present and in the moment. Think about that for just a quick second. Not wanting things, not desiring something to be different, creates more peace internally. Being here in this present moment with no desire to have something different, for the world to be different, for somebody else to be different, sitting here with no desires in this moment is what creates peace internally. And that is not easy to do. You know, when you reach a point, that point of calm and quiet inside, to me, that's where you start to feel peace. That's where you start to feel happiness. To me, happiness isn't about having good thoughts or having bad thoughts or not having bad thoughts. It's not about people in your life not dying or things not changing. It's about not wanting things to be different than they currently are. If I don't want something to be different than it currently is in this moment right now, then I can find peace. It's about finding gratitude right now, no matter what. And there's a quote by Rabbi Shitztel, and I hope I'm saying that correctly because I might be saying that wrong. And he says, happiness is not having what you want, but wanting what you have. So happiness is not having what you want, but wanting what you have. Being grateful for what it is that you currently have. The less that I want, the more that I can accept things as they are. And the more that I accept, the less that my mind races. And the less that my mind races, the more that I'm at peace. And so I think happiness is about not suffering. And suffering comes from desire for things to be different than they are. Not wanting things, not worrying too much about what has been or what will be in the future, looking outside of ourselves for anything that's a mistake and anything that we want to be different. Happiness, all of that is internal. Took me a long time to learn this, and it's something that I'm really trying to get better at, and I am not that good at still. I'm getting a little bit better, but I'm still not that great because I have like 35 years before this of programming, of wanting something to be different, of desire, of change, of wanting something, whatever it might be. And so I've something I'm really trying to work, and I want you just to kind of open your mind up to it as well, which is like, yeah, I do kind of put myself into my own suffering. Like we keep thinking that we'll be happy when we get this or we get that or when things will be different. And that's the mistake that we keep making over and over again. Believing something out there, out in the world, will forever make us happy. And that's a lie. Happiness is only an internal job. Nothing else can make you happy. No one else can make you happy. Maybe for a second, but then you're going to go back to the way that you've always felt. When you want something, you're basically agreeing to be unhappy until you get it. And so we want things all day, and then we wonder why we're not happy. And then we see ads about a new thing that just came out, and now I've got to get this thing. And I research about this thing, and I've got this internal feeling of like, oh my God, I should buy this thing. And then I won't feel good until I get that thing. Well, that's what ads are designed to do. Ads are designed to exploit the human desire system, to exploit your hardware that you were born with to want more, for things to be different. You're not good enough until you get that. Happiness comes from inside of us, not outside of us. Sadness, stress, unrest, all of that comes from inside of us as well, not outside of us. And happiness is a choice, but it's also a skill set. It's a skill that you develop. And developing any skill set in the world takes time and it takes attention. It takes your time and your attention to be happier, to want less, to be grateful, to be in the moment. Now, I can already hear people out there getting pissed when I say that happiness is a choice. I put a reel up a couple years ago, and the very first line that I said was happiness is a choice, so you have to make it. And people got fucking pissed, like so mad. Like they were just sending me DMs. Well, you don't know about my life. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what's happening around me. You don't know where I come from. You don't know this. You don't know that. It's like, let me make it stupid simple. Okay. Like, let me just make life as stupid simple as I possibly can. You're born, right? If you're listening to this podcast, you were born at one point in time. We're all born into this world. We all have all kinds of experiences. We see things, we hear things, we feel things, and then we die. That's life at its simplest form. We're born, things happen, we die. Is that correct? Yeah, that's basically the simplest form of what life is. How we interpret all of those experiences that happen to us between birth and death, how we interpret it is up to us. We get to choose. And how you interpret it is going to dictate whether you're happy and you're at peace, or if you're stressed, if there's something wrong, if you feel mad all the time, pissed, sad, emotional, whatever it might be. So it's not about what happens to you. It's how you interpret what happens to you. And you can choose to be happy. You can. And the best part is if you believe happiness is a choice, you can start working on it. Because if you believe happiness is a choice, that's the only way that you now have control over your life. That's if you say, no, happiness isn't a choice, it's based off of what happens to me and what other people say to me, well, then you're not in control of your life. You're at the whim of what happens around you and what people say to you that are around you. You can decide from this moment on that nothing outside of you can control your emotions. I am going to control my emotions. I'm going to control my desires. I'm going to control what I want, what I don't want. I'm going to be the one that's in the driver's seat of my life from now on. Don't expect life to be a certain way. Life is just life. And when you understand this, there's no reason to be happy or sad. Things happen, and I'm going to try my best to be happy and at peace no matter what happens to me. When you stop feeling like something's missing, you're at peace. When you don't want things to be different, you're at peace. It doesn't mean that you can't evolve. It doesn't mean that you don't change things and you just stay in the same position your entire life. You can keep evolving. You can keep accomplishing things. But what it comes down to is how I react to the world around me. Don't worry about how things should be. Instead, focus on your own experience and what you can create. And so let's talk about peace just a little bit more, okay? Real happiness comes from being at peace, like internal peace, calm, the feeling of, which I think most people in this world want more of, just that feeling of just like a deep sigh. I want more of that. Most of the time, happiness and peace come from accepting things as they are, not changing, not I'm not going to be happy until it's different, not changing what's happening around us, changing the people around us, changing the circumstances. It's accepting things as they are. Acceptance is the key. Acceptance is the doorway to your peace and your happiness. It's about being more present. It's about allowing ourselves to be comfortable being present. When you're comfortable being present, peace basically just walks in the door. We all want moments that make us feel alive and make us feel present, don't we? Like we all want to travel and see an amazing sunset. We want to go see, whatever it might be, whatever crazy things that happen. We might want to go over and see stuff happen in Rome, and we want to watch the sunset in Tuscany, and we want to watch running of the bulls in Pamplona. We want to have all of those exciting things. Those amazing experiences bring us to the present moment. Like if you think about the most amazing experience of your life or the things that you're trying to go for, it's things that bring you into this present moment. Amazing experiences, travel, being with people that you love, watching your team win the championship. But wanting those moments, desiring, I won't be happy until I get those, is actually what pulls us away from the present moment. It's kind of crazy when you actually sit and think about it. We want things that make us feel present, but the wanting of those things steals our presence. It's like this weird conundrum. It's really interesting. When you find like deep truths in life, they're almost always a paradox. It's like we want, if you have your team win the championship, you're so present in the moment, you're not thinking about anything else, and you feel alive and you feel amazing because you're 100% in this present moment. And so we want things that make us feel present. But the wanting of those things steals our presence. And so presence is really what we want. Presence is really what we're trying to work towards. We're always chasing the next thing, the next and the next and the next. And, I got to buy this thing, and you buy that thing, and now you want to buy the next thing. This constant chasing is what makes a lot of people anxious. And so I've been recommending it a lot recently in the past year to you guys, to my friends. Be bored more. Be okay with being bored. Change your mindset change your wording from boredom. Instead of saying I'm bored, say I'm relaxing, and see how that changes your mind. The same way that you can't work out all day long because your body's going to tire. Your body needs rest. Your body needs relaxation in order for it to grow muscles and for you to get stronger. And so I've been trying to make myself bored, quote unquote, bored a lot lately. Yesterday, a couple days ago, actually it was at this point, I meditated, I made coffee, and I just sat on my couch looking outside for like 30 minutes. I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't listening to music. I wasn't reading a book. I was just trying to sit and get my body that's been 38 years of go, 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 to just chill for a minute. Try sitting without doing anything, not reading, not listening to music, not listening to this podcast. It's hard, isn't it? Because we've trained ourselves to be go, 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 go. And we're always anxious about doing something. And we feel like, I've got to be productive. I've got to be doing the next thing. If you look at societies, I grew up in America. We are a go, go, go nation. Like we're always moving. We're always going. If you look at the societies that are the happiest, the nations that are the happiest, they're the ones that they don't live to work, they work to live. And so when we have this go, 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 it creates this feeling of like anxiety within us. And this anxiety can make us really unhappy. It steals our peace. And so it's just our thoughts running in our head constantly. We have to do more. We have to go more. And we often feel troubled about this, and we can't, because of the fact that we're so troubled with it, we can't sit alone quietly because that's when the thoughts really come in. And so I really want you to start to think about this and to realize like all of the problems in the world, there's a great quote that says, all of the problems in the world I'm really butchering this. All of the problems in the world comes from man's inability to sit alone in a room by himself. All of the problems in the world come from our inability to sit alone in a room by ourselves. And so if you can have more peace, if you want more peace, if you want more happiness, try to start desiring less. It doesn't mean that you just resign and just sit on the couch and play video games all day and that's going to create the life that you want. But it's like, how can I just be at peace more within myself? How can I find more gratitude for what I already have? How can I keep evolving and I can keep creating more and I can keep doing more? That's fine. But how can I just try to remove a little bit more desire from my life every single day? And with that, you'll have more happiness and you'll have more peace. So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this episode, please share it on your Instagram stories. Tag me in at Rob Dial Jr., ROBDIALJR. And if you want to work with me a little bit deeper than just the podcast, check out this thing I have called Mindset Mentor Plus. You can get all the information that you need at mindsetmentor.com. Once again, mindsetmentor.com. And with that, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make somebody else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day. Welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to teach you how to be happier in your life based off of psychology and science. Let's dive in. Today, I'm going to be teaching you about the psychology of happiness and how to be happier. Now, this is a topic I've done before in the past, but ultimately, I think it's super important to dive really deep into it because of the fact that I would assume every single person who's listening to this podcast right now wants to be happy. If you were to look at your entire life, wouldn't it be nice to live the rest of your life happier, more content, more peaceful, with more gratitude? Probably. And the thing that I want you to understand about happiness is everyone wants a state of mind of happiness, but how do you get there? If I asked anybody on the street, would you want to be happy? They'd say, yeah. Well, how the hell do you get there? Because when you look at happiness, defining happiness is not really like a one size fits all type of thing. It's different from person to person. What makes you happy is not necessarily what would make me happy and someone else happy, and vice versa. And so some people are simple and they find happiness in little things. Other people, need a little bit more to be happy. But the science of happiness has really gained a whole lot of attention in the recent years. And there's a lot of studies and research that's been going on to try to understand what makes a person happy. How can they increase their happiness? And so we're going to dive into just the science of happiness and how all of us can really start to work at being happier. Yes, you have to work to be happier. When you look at happiness, though, it really makes you take a step back and think to yourself, what is happiness? And happiness is defined as a subjective state of mind. The key word of that is subjective, right? So yes, you can feel joy and satisfaction and contentment and gratitude, but it is all subjective, which means that you can make yourself happy at any moment. Now, this phrase, when I post it on social media and reels, pisses people off because they're like, well, you don't know my fucking life. How are you going to tell me that I can just be happy at any moment? And I'm like, that's basing everything off the external. Happiness is not, hey, when my life is the way that I want it to be, then I'll be happy. Happiness is, I will be happy no matter what happens in my life. And so it's important for us to really start to think about, how can I be happier? Because happier people, they have better relationships, they have less stress, and they're actually, interestingly enough, more resilient when they face adversity. And so when you look at happiness and you look at the science of happiness, it's really psychology, it's neuroscience, it's philosophy, it's sociology, it's all of this stuff. And so when you look at the neuroscience of happiness, can you see happiness in the brain? Or is it just something that we feel? Well, there's a lot of neuroscientists that have been researching happiness, and it turns out you can actually see happiness in the brain. It's really started to help us understand that when someone really feels happy, there's certain regions in the brain that are associated with happiness. There's the prefrontal cortex, there's the amygdala, and there's the striatum. And so when you look at the prefrontal cortex is involved in your decision making, your goal setting, your planning. And so this region of the brain is also associated with really positive emotions such as happiness, contentment, joy, all of that. And what's interesting is that when you are not happy, like you've heard me say it over and over again in this podcast, when emotions are high, logic is low. The reason why is because when your emotions are high, it actually starts to shut down parts of the prefrontal cortex, which is where your decision making is. And so when you're in a happier, more joyful, more grateful state, you actually make better decisions. You actually plan better. And so the first part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex. The next part of the brain is the amygdala, which is the place where you process emotions, especially fear and anxiety. And so research has shown that when people are happier, they tend to have less activity in their amygdala when they're exposed to really negative stimuli. And so interestingly enough, When you're happy, it starts to shut down parts of the amygdala. There's less activity in it, which means there's less fear, there's less negative emotion when you have that. Meaning happier people are less fearful and less worried. I would assume, based off of all of the things that are happening in the world, everybody listening wants to be happy, but you also probably want to be less fearful. You probably want to be less worried. So that's the amygdala. And then the striatum is involved in reward processing and motivation. So research has shown that people who are happier tend to have more activity in the striatum when they're exposed to rewarding stimuli. So when you accomplish something and when you get to where you want to go, you actually feel happier, but you also feel more motivated to take action to get that reward. So it seems like happiness really affects in a lot of areas in your life, right? And so when you look at it, there's a lot of different things. So that's how it works in your brain. Now let's talk about the social factors of happiness. When you look at social factors, they play a really, really important role in happiness. There's research that has shown that people who have social support, social connections, deep integration of friends, all of those things are really important predictors of if that person's going to be happy. When you look at social support, there was an entire study that was done. I did an entire episode on it about the 80-year study that Harvard did. It's over 80 years at this point, but they did an 80-year study on happiness, and they really started to break down what makes people happy. And they found out the number one thing that makes people happy or makes people sad or depressed or anxious is their deep relationships. They found that people who have really deep relationships with a few other people they can love, people they can trust, people that accept them as they are, tend to be way happier and in turn actually live longer. People who have toxic relationships with the people that they're closest to actually tend to live less than the people who are happier. And so not only does it make your quality of life better to decide that you're going to focus on happiness and gratitude and joy, it also helps you live longer. Because they found that social support buffers against negative effects of stress, and it actually improves mental and physical health, which increase happiness. And so that's really interesting. When you have a good social support system, it doesn't mean you need 100 friends, but you have one or two people that you can really trust, because the social support is a huge buffer against the negative effects of stress that you have inside of your life. And so when you look at the Harvard study, when you look at all of that, those studies really emphasize the importance of cultivating positive relationships. And that cultivating means something that you work at. Relationships take time, they take effort. It's like a garden. You've got to go out and actually take care of the garden. And so it really helps. It's not about how many relationships somebody has, but it's about the depth of the relationships that they do have. Good relationships, you live happier, you live longer. Bad relationships, toxic relationships, you tend to not even live as long as people who are happier. And so it's really interesting because the insights are really consistent with the idea that happiness is not really found outside of oneself. Sure, it's being around other people. Yeah, that is outside of you, but it's the way that you feel when you're around those people. Because you can be around somebody and feel amazing, but you can also be around somebody and feel completely alone. And so it's really important for us to understand is when you look at these insights, is it's really showing you, and it's consistent with the idea that happiness is not found outside of oneself. It's a state of mind that can be cultivated, that can be grown, that can be developed through deliberate effort of saying, I am going to be happy no matter what happens to me. I'm going to be positive no matter what happens to me. And when I say positive, I don't mean toxic positivity in the fact of like shit hits the fan and you're like, oh my God, I'm just so happy. Like you can look at negative things and say, I'm going to go through this in a positive way. And you can find the silver lining so that you come to negative things in a positive way. And so it's an internal state of mind that can be cultivated and something that can be grown and developed through deliberate effort. So now that we look at that, how can we increase our own happiness? So now that we have a little bit of a better understanding of the science of happiness, what you need, the neuroscience of it, how can we get better at it? I'm going to say the most cliche thing that you could possibly say nowadays, because everybody freaking says it. And now I feel like it's because everybody says I think everyone says it because it is important, but it just seems so corny at this point, is to practice gratitude. It really actually works. I promise you this. When you wake up in the morning and you practice and set your mind to, I'm going to be grateful no matter what happens to me. I'm going to look around and find the stuff that's happening to me that's good, that I love, the people that I love. It works. And there's science and there's studies that show it. It's one of the simplest, most effective ways to increase your happiness is to look around you and to focus on the things that you have and feel grateful for those things. I've always heard the phrase, happiness is not getting what you want, but it's wanting what you already have. And seeing the things you already have and saying, damn, this is all that I've wanted. All of this is great. Now you could still be motivated and want to achieve more, but can you do that from a place of gratitude immediately? So how do you actually do this? And first off, is there any science behind it? Is there any studies behind it? There is. There was a study that was done in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. And the study examined the effects of gratitude on subjective well-being. Once again, subjective well-being. And participants were basically instructed to write either about things that they were grateful for or about hassles and difficulties in their lives. And results showed that those who wrote about gratitude reported higher levels of subjective well-being. So the ones that focus on things they were grateful for actually had higher levels of subjective well-being. Research has shown that by practicing gratitude, you can increase your happiness, you can increase your well-being, you can increase your health, and also your life satisfaction. So the thing that researchers recommend is to keep a gratitude journal, to wake up every single day and just write down a few things that you're grateful for. Early in the morning, when you're able to set your reticular activating system, because if you don't know, your reticular activating system is basically the bouncer at the door of what information comes into your brain. And so if you decide, I'm going to stop being negative, because if you're negative and you're focusing on negative stuff, you're going to find all of the things in your life to be negative about. But if you wake up in the morning, you say, I'm going to set the bouncer at the door and I'm going to concentrate on what I'm grateful for, your brain will start to notice throughout the day more things to be grateful for that you've probably been missing. And so you're going to write down 3 things that you're grateful for every single day. And they don't have to be huge things, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm, incredibly successful, or I have, a 6-pack or whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be big things. I have a multi-billion-dollar business. It doesn't have to be any of those things. It could be a sunset. It could be a kind gesture of your friend and what they did for you yesterday. It could be larger things like a meaningful relationship, a fulfilling career. It could be the health of your family. It could be that, hey, the sun decided to come out today. It's been raining the past few days. And it's about setting your sights, your focus on what you can be grateful for first thing in the morning so that you start seeing unconsciously, pulling from your unconscious to your conscious mind, the things that are around you that maybe you've been missing because you've been focusing on the negative. Another thing, obviously, based off of what I said just a little while ago, is if you want to be happier, really start to focus on positive relationships. I've fucked this up before in the past of being so busy that I have stopped calling friends and stopped hanging out with friends and stopped being around them. And then you realize you can start to build a business and you can build success and stuff. But what is success if you don't have anyone to celebrate it with? And so have you ever really taken a step back and said, who are the people in my life that I want to spend more time with? Maybe there's some friends that you have deep relationships with. You want to spend more time with them. Maybe there's some people that are acquaintances and you're like, you know what? I would really love to build a deep relationship with them. Because when you build really positive relationships, it will increase your overall happiness. It'll improve your mental health, your physical health, and really make you feel like you have a safe space to be yourself. And it's really interesting. You can, and if you don't have people around you, because I have people that send me messages, they're like, no one around me, everyone's around me is a loser, or they don't do anything with their lives. Join clubs, join groups, start to find new hobbies to be around people, find things that are aligned with your interests, attend social events to meet new people. There's people out there who are the people that you want to meet if you don't know them already, right? Something super simple to think about. Just try to put yourself out there a little bit more if you're trying to meet new people. Another thing that's really important is, in corny and cliche according to all of this, but it really actually works, is mindfulness and meditation. Research has shown over and over again that mindfulness and meditation increase happiness. It reduces stress, it improves your mental health, it improves your physical health. There was a study that was done in clinical psychology, and they actually found that the results showed that mindfulness can improve the outcomes of depression, anxiety, chronic pain, and other conditions, which shows the benefits of mindfulness and meditation in your overall well-being, but also in your happiness. And so you can try a mindfulness meditation. There's 5 billion of them on YouTube. And it's just, sit down, be quiet. You can focus on your breath for just a few minutes each day so you can turn off that monkey mind that's just constantly running all the time, telling you what's wrong, telling you what's not right, all of that stuff. And you really try to cultivate this mindfulness and just being present, not always having to be somewhere else, not always having to be, the busiest person that's around, whatever it might be. And so it's really important to start to say to yourself, like, hey, is it possible for me to start to work on my happiness? First off, I think it's important to ask yourself the question, is it important for me to be happy in my life? And if it is, how can I start working at being happier? How can I cultivate this mindfulness? Because happiness is a state of mind. Happiness is a subjective experience, which means that you can decide to be happy at any moment. It's not dependent. This isn't some guy just on a podcast saying it. I've told you studies after studies. There's many more that I haven't said. It's not dependent on external factors. It's dependent on your internal state. And that's something that you can control. External factors such as wealth and status and relationships and all this stuff, sure, maybe they contribute a little bit to your sense of well-being, but they don't guarantee your happiness. You guarantee your happiness. Research has shown that people who are wealthy and famous and successful are not necessarily happier than those who are not. So if you think, oh, well, when I succeed, then I'll be happy. No, how about you? You can still succeed if you want to, whatever success means to you. But can you be happy on your way to success is really the question you should be asking yourself. Because research has found that happiness is often a result of your internal state, not your external factors. So how can you start to work on your happiness immediately? So that's what I got for you for today's episode. If you love this podcast, I actually want to announce something really special. I am about to launch something called Mindset Mentor Plus. And it's some way that you can actually join in a community and myself to not just listen to these episodes, but fully integrate every single episode into your life. And each episode that comes out, Mindset Mentor Plus is going to be giving detailed worksheets, thought-provoking journaling prompts, and targeted assignments so that are detailed so that you can actively engage in these episodes in your life and apply each episode to your life as well. So that you're not just like hearing the message and passively letting it go from one ear to the other, but actually implementing it and actively using the episodes in your life to dive deeper and truly absorb every single topic. There's going to be exclusive question and answer sessions with me. There's access to an entire community of other people who are Mindset Mentor listeners, many other bonuses as well. And all of it will be less than probably 99% of the people listening spend on coffee every single month. And the founding members of it will get 25% discount. So it's not out yet. If you want to sign up for the wait list, all you have to do is go to mindsetwaitlist.com and you will be the first to know before it's even announced in the podcast so that you can get the discount and be part of the community so we can grow and improve and really start to integrate this more and more into your life. So once again, if you want to learn more about it, go to mindsetwaitlist.com. And with that, I'm going to leave you the same way I leave you every single episode. Make it your mission to make somebody else's day better. I appreciate you, and I hope that you have an amazing day.